In a world where wealth often silences compassion, one young woman found herself humiliated in front of the rich and powerful. But what happened next changed everything. This is the story of Elena Cruz, the waitress who was mocked, broken down, and then lifted into a new life by a stranger's unexpected act of courage. Before we dive in, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever witnessed someone stand up for what's right when no one else would? I'd love to hear your stories. Now, let's begin. She had been hired to serve at a Billionaire's winter gala, a night that promised opulence for some and humiliation for others. Elena wasn't just balancing glasses of mulled wine and truffle canapes. She was balancing her brother's unpaid hospital bills, the crushing weight of eviction notices, and the quiet hope that her dream of opening a small bakery hadn't been completely extinguished. The hall buzzed with talk of private jets grounded by storms and ski chalets sold for tens of millions. To the guests, Elena was invisible, a pair of hands, a uniform, a shadow moving silently through their gilded world. But she had caught the eye of someone standing apart from the crowd. A man in his late 40s, dressed in a simple tailored coat, leaned near a frosted window, sipping whiskey without drinking it. Alexander Holt, a quiet self-made millionaire, watching the spectacle with an expression caught between amusement and disdain. He saw everything. He saw Elena too. And before the night was over, his presence would change the course of her life forever. The gala was hosted by the Winters family, owners of half the luxury real estate in Colorado. Their name was carved into ski lifts, plastered on luxury lodges, and whispered in boardrooms. At the heart of the spectacle was their son, Chase Winters, mid-20s, golden-haired, dressed in a velvet suit, and drunk on both champagne and entitlement. He thrived on attention. To him, the staff weren't people. They were props. Elena had been warned by her manager earlier, blend in. Smile. Don't speak unless spoken to. It was the same rule she'd followed her whole working life. But Chase had other plans. He noticed Elena weaving through the ballroom with a tray of steaming cocoa topped with whipped cream. His friends, equally privileged and cruel, stood around laughing about who had the fastest car and whose family had bought the bigger chalet. "Hey, you, Cocoa Girl!" Chase snapped his fingers without even looking at her. Elena forced a polite smile and offered the tray. But instead of taking a cup, Chase smirked and said loudly, "Careful, everyone. She might spill. Looks like she borrowed those shoes from a thrift store." His circle erupted with laughter. Elena's face burned, but she kept silent. She had heard worse. She had to. Every dollar she earned tonight meant more medicine for her brother. But Chase wasn't done. Cruelty, to him, was a sport. And the night had only just begun. Across the hall, Alexander Holt's eyes narrowed. He had seen men like Chase before. The kind who confused money with worth. And he knew this wasn't going to end well. The night dragged on, a blur of toasts, laughter, and a string quartet playing beneath glittering chandeliers. Elena kept her head down, moving swiftly through the room with her trays. But Chase Winters had her in his sights. The second incident came when she passed by his group with a tray of vintage red wine. One of Chase's friends, accidentally, jostled her arm. A glass tipped, and a few drops landed on Chase's sleeve. He froze, staring at the faint stain as if it were blood. "Unbelievable," he said, his voice loud enough to silence the nearby guests. "Do you even know what this jacket costs? Probably more than you make in a year." Elena immediately apologized, reaching for a napkin from her apron. "I'm so sorry, sir. Someone bumped me, I didn't." But Chase swatted her hand away. "Don't touch me. Who knows where those hands have been?" The crowd chuckled. Some looked uncomfortable, but no one spoke. In these circles, silence was safer than principle. Chase wasn't satisfied. His lips curled into a cruel smile as he gestured toward the massive floor-to-ceiling windows that opened onto the snowy terrace outside. "You know what?" he said. "Mistakes happen. Maybe what you need is a little fresh air to clear your head." Before Elena could move, Chase suddenly grabbed her tray and tipped it. A storm of wine glasses shattered across the marble floor, crimson liquid spreading like blood at her feet. Gasps filled the ballroom. Elena froze, heart pounding, humiliation burning hotter than the fire in the stone hearth. Chase leaned closer, his words cutting like glass. "Clean it up. On your knees. In front of everyone." Laughter rippled again. Phones were raised, recording. To them, this was entertainment. Elena's legs trembled. She wanted to disappear. The cold mountain air seeped through the windows, but it was nothing compared to the ice of their mockery. And yet, just beyond the crowd, Alexander Holt was already moving. His quiet expression had hardened into steel. He would not let this cruelty go unanswered. Elena crouched on the marble floor, shaking hands trying to gather the broken glass. Her uniform sleeves soaked crimson with spilled wine, her cheeks burning as guests whispered and snickered. Chase towered above her, arms folded, basking in the laughter. "Hurry up," he mocked. "Or maybe I should call security to escort you back to whatever diner you crawled out of." More laughter. Phones clicked. No one moved to help her. Until a new voice cut through the noise. Calm, deep, steady. "That's enough." The room fell silent. Every head turned. From the edge of the crowd, Alexander Holt stepped forward. His coat dusted with snowflakes, his glass of untouched whiskey set aside. His presence was like a blade slicing through the arrogance in the air. Chase frowned, straightening. "And who exactly are you supposed to be?" Alexander didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked past Chase and crouched down beside Elena. He removed his cashmere scarf and gently draped it over her shoulders, shielding her from the stairs. "Are you hurt?" he asked her, his voice soft enough only she could hear. Elena shook her head, though her eyes brimmed with tears. For the first time that night, someone had spoken to her, not as staff, not as a servant, but as a human being. Alexander rose slowly, turning to face Chase. His voice carried now, firm and sharp. "You call this leadership? Humiliating a young woman in front of your guests for sport?" Chase's smirk faltered, but pride pushed him forward. "Hey, it was just a joke. Don't get dramatic. She spilled wine on me. She's staff. Mistakes have consequences." Alexander's gaze hardened. "There's a difference between consequences and cruelty. And tonight, you've shown the world which side you stand on." The silence that followed was suffocating. Guests shifted uncomfortably, suddenly ashamed of the phones still in their hands. Chase looked to his father, Richard Winters, standing by the grand fireplace. But the man's face had gone pale. He knew who Alexander Holt was, and he knew the damage his son had just unleashed. The ballroom was silent except for the faint crackle of the fire. All eyes were on Alexander Holt as he stood firm, his presence dwarfing the glittering chandeliers and the towering pine trees seen through the frosted glass. Chase tried to recover his swagger, stepping closer with a smirk. "You're making this bigger than it is. She's staff, I'm a guest. That's the order of things." Alexander tilted his head slightly, his eyes sharp. "Order? No, Mr. Winters. This isn't order. It's rot. And rot spreads." A murmur ran through the crowd. Chase faltered, glancing again toward his father. Richard Winters, host of the Gala, cleared his throat and forced a strained smile. "Mr. Holt, forgive my son. A little champagne, a foolish moment." But Alexander cut him off, his tone quiet but searing. "Don't insult this room by pretending it was a mistake. It was a performance. Your son humiliated someone who couldn't fight back, and you stood by and watched." Richard's face flushed crimson. His reputation, his empire, all teetered on the edge of this moment. Chase snapped, trying to regain control. "You don't get to lecture me. Who even are you?" Alexander finally turned fully toward him. His words rang across the hall like a bell. "I am the man your father has been begging for months to invest in his luxury expansion project. The one deal that would keep Winters' properties afloat." A stunned silence. Guests exchanged glances. Richard Winters' forced smile crumbled. Alexander's voice dropped to an icy calm. "And after what I've witnessed tonight, let me be clear, our partnership is finished. Permanently." Gasps rippled through the hall. Richard staggered back, as if physically struck. The empire he had built, the expansion he had promised investors, it was unraveling in real time. Alexander's gaze swept the guests, many of whom quickly lowered their phones and eyes. "I do not invest in cruelty. I do not invest in arrogance. I invest in people, with integrity. And tonight, Mr. Winters, you've proven your family has none." Chase's smirk vanished. He looked suddenly small, cornered, exposed. The echo of Alexander's words filled the vast hall. This wasn't just a confrontation, it was an execution. The Winters name, once spoken with envy, was now laced with shame. And standing in the center of it all was Elena, wrapped in Alexander's scarf, no longer invisible. The silence in the ballroom was suffocating. The same guests who had laughed minutes ago now stared at their shoes, pretending not to have enjoyed the cruelty. The air reeked of shame. Richard Winters reached out desperately. "Mr. Holt, please. This can be fixed. My son didn't mean." Alexander didn't even look at him. His gaze was on Elena, still kneeling among the shards of glass. He extended a hand. "Elena," he said, his voice low but steady, "stand up. You don't belong down there." Her trembling hand slipped into his, and he pulled her gently to her feet. He draped his scarf tighter around her shoulders, shielding her from the room's stares. Then, turning to the catering manager who stood frozen by the door, Alexander spoke with authority. "Ms. Cruz will be paid in full for this evening, plus additional compensation. Send the invoice directly to my office." The manager nodded rapidly, relief flooding her face. Elena, overwhelmed, whispered, "Sir, you don't have to." Alexander met her eyes, his expression softening. "I do. Because they won't." Then his voice hardened again as he looked back at Richard and Chase. "You've built a house of mirrors, reflecting only your vanity. But mirrors crack. Tonight, yours shattered." The weight of his words settled like snow on the crowd. The Winters family, once untouchable, looked small, fragile, and pitiful. Without another word, Alexander placed a hand lightly at Elena's back and guided her toward the massive oak doors. The crowd parted silently, not daring to stop them. Outside, The mountain air bit cold against her wet sleeves, but Elena could breathe again. The snow was falling softly, blanketing the resort in silence. For the first time all night, she felt the crushing weight of humiliation begin to lift. Alexander's driver appeared, opening the door of a sleek black SUV. "Take her home," Alexander instructed, "and see that she has everything she needs." Elena looked at him, stunned. "Why? Why are you helping me?" Alexander's eyes, dark and steady, held hers. "Because kindness isn't weakness. It's the only kind of wealth that matters." He closed the door gently, leaving her wrapped in warmth while the SUV rolled into the snowy night. Behind them, inside the glittering hall, the winter's legacy was already collapsing. What had been a night of triumph had turned into the beginning of their end. Spring had melted the snow in Aspen, and Elena Cruz's life looked nothing like it had that night in the ballroom. The small apartment where she once collapsed after endless shifts was gone. In its place stood a sunlit studio above a quiet street cafe in Denver. The windows smelled of bread and roasted coffee because the cafe was hers, Elena's hearth, the bakery she had dreamed about for years but never believed possible. The scars of humiliation had faded into something else, fuel. Alexander Holt had done more than step in that night. He had opened a door. He had introduced her to people who believed in her talent and drive, not in spite of where she came from, but because of it. Inside her bakery, canvases hung on the walls, her paintings, no longer gathering dust in a closet but admired by strangers who saw the strength in her work. And at one corner table, often with a coffee in hand, sat her younger brother, his health finally stable thanks to treatment she could now afford. On the night of her grand opening, Elena stood behind the counter, flowers still clinging to her apron, when she felt a familiar presence at the door. Alexander Holt, hands in his coat pockets, gave her the smallest of nods. No speeches, no grand gestures, just the same quiet certainty that had silenced a ballroom months ago. "Looks like you built something beautiful," he said. Elena smiled, her eyes shining. "No. I just built what was already inside me. You just reminded me I could." For a moment, there was nothing but the warmth of the cafe lights and the steady hum of life. The world that had once mocked her seemed far away, irrelevant. As Elena looked around, her brother laughing with friends, customers savoring her bread, her art glowing on the walls, she realized the truth. That night in Aspen wasn't the night she was broken. It was the night she was reborn. Elena's journey is a reminder that sometimes the cruelest moments in life are not endings, but beginnings. That dignity, once defended, can outshine all the glittering wealth in the world. What did you think of Elena's story? Have you ever witnessed a moment where someone stood up to defend another in a powerful way? Share your thoughts in the comments. We love hearing from you. And if this story inspired you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss more stories that reveal the best and worst of humanity.